Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Castlekeeper Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video I am going to be doing an update and slight preview of our Castles and Crusades Yggsburgh campaign. This is update number 18, so we have completed our 18 weeks so far of sessions. Week 19 is tonight, so this video I'm not going to actually post to the channel until we're well into our game session tonight. So probably not until about 10:30 or 11 o'clock by the time you actually see this. and that's primarily because I don't want to. I want to talk a little bit about just the planning that I'm putting into this next main scene that they're going into, and then also just talk a little bit about where I see the campaign going, or just trying to tighten some things up on the overall thrust of this campaign, because I'm kind of a little bit shaky on where it's actually going, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So, in case you are not aware, um, this is a book that was put out by Trollord Games. It's a re-release of Castles Yggsburgh, the Yggsburgh campaign setting by Gary Gygax, and they are currently working on and completing a Kickstarter that released, I believe, 10 of Gary Gygax's world building books and supplements. And so, I mean, it's going to be quite an impressive library that I have by the time I'm expecting something like 14 books coming from Trollord Games, all Castles and Crusades related, obviously, and most of which are works of Gary Gygax. So this is the book I'm talking about. This is the campaign we're running in, and so far it's a really interesting campaign setting, and it's very wide open for the players to choose like where they're going. So there's a lot of opportunities for side quests and such, and then my own insertions of other side quests just based solely on kind of some of the directions that the players have been taking their characters into, and and I think that's why overall I'm kind of struggling with getting a theme for the whole of the campaign. Um, it's not like my AD&D first edition campaign, The Keepers of Queskatan, that ran for a little over 2 years. By the sixth or so, session in that, maybe a little bit lower, maybe the eighth, um, the players had kind of decided on a group name, and that's where they coined the term the Keepers of Queskatan, and all of a sudden that just became the underlying theme of uh, what would become their entire campaign career, from first level to 10th, 11th level. They became known, they became renowned as the Keepers of Queskatan. I'm waiting for that kind of thing to come together right now. So it's kind of fragmented. They've been doing many different side quests, and I've been trying to string them together, and leave little kernels of info that will kind of connect them in some, at least a minor way, so that maybe that kind of a theme can develop. So yeah, it's something that I think is important for people to understand when they're game mastering, regardless of the system that you're doing, and you're doing long campaigns like I, like to do and intend to do. Is that sometimes even if you have the same group of players, which I do have from my AD&D to now, um, even with the same group of players, sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for that kind of sense of theme to come together. Don't you know don't panic over it if it's not really coming together. You can keep on running, a very loose kind of do what you want kind of campaign, but I certainly prefer to have at least some kind of an underlying theme behind the whole thing. So might have a little bit of tweaking to do here and there. And of course, when my players do actually watch this video and they'll see what my concerns are, we'll probably come together and discuss and say, well, you know what, you know, think about some way that you can get the party's name established and move forward with some kind of an overall goal that you're looking for. The other thing might be also, which I just considered in this moment, is that we were all very, very familiar with the world of Greyhawk. And so it might have been a little bit easier for them to engage with that and come into that. Whereas few of us, myself included, is not as familiar with Castles Yggsburgh and the Yggsburgh campaign setting, and so that might also be another issue. Like I said, I just considered that a moment ago, so that might be it as well. So little tweaking to go on, but let's start doing the recap. So this is my current party. It's shrunk a little bit, so it's down to 6 players, and all 6 of these players were part of my AD&D First Edition campaign. So we have Bill the Fighter, who is now 3rd level, and so you can see he's 3rd level, 36 hit points, and I think his AC is 18. It might be actually higher. It actually might be 20 by now. I didn't update their ACs yet. So he's known as Bastard Bill, even though he has so far a penchant for breaking his bastard sword in combat. So right now he's using a great scimitar as a replacement that he took off of a dead hobgoblin. Then we have Cornelius. So Cornelius is our gnome druid. He's 4th level, 38 hit points, 11 HD. I mean AC. That's probably a little bit higher as well. We have Cormac, our cleric. He is 4th level at 27 hit points. Then we have Pounce, our elven ranger, and she is 4th level, as you can see, 27 hit points. We have Seven, our 4th level monk. It's played by, that is Seven, and it's played by Empty Inside, Andrew. And finally, we have Yarg, our 3rd level wizard, played by Kelly, and doing really well as far as that's concerned too. Now, we have Cormac and Cornelius, played respectively by Alan and Mirador. So that's our roundup of the characters and where they stand right now. So you can see that the title here, or the subtitle, is Yggsburgh, None Can Deny Us Independence. And initially, that's kind of where, the story of Yggsburgh is that it had gained independence. About 100 years ago or so, and there was a rising tone or a tide of whisperings about how how it might be challenged, its independence might be challenged, and we were going more towards a like a political intrigue kind of thing. But then, there started to be a little bit of a shift, and there's always been this old backstory of Yggsburgh, where a mysterious wizard, an archmage, had actually helped liberate the city, and used his great magics to turn the tide of the siege of Yggsburgh, and that's what led them to be successful. And then that mage suddenly disappeared, like just miraculously disappeared, and now it's 100 years since, and those murmurings are coming up. So the party so far, they're starting to get these little tidbits of information that is slowly bringing them towards the mega dungeon of Castle Zajig. But I'm not quite sure that's exactly what they want this whole campaign to be. Because it is a mega dungeon, but I'm certainly not going to throw them in there and we'll be inside that dungeon for the next 2 years. That's not, I don't think that's what anybody really anticipates. And I don't think that that's a great way to run a mega dungeon. A mega dungeon is something that, at least in my view, I will have them, go about their business, go into the dungeon maybe one time to do one very specific task. Then once that task is completed, they will go back. They'll do something. They might get involved in something else, and then something else will possibly bring them back to the mega dungeon once again for another purpose, another goal. So that's kind of what I'm hoping happens. That's how I'm hoping to actually run the Castle's Age mega dungeon, instead of having them go through all 13 to 17 levels of it, or whatever it actually ultimately will be when they re-release everything. So that's where we stand with that. So now a little bit of a preview of where they actually are in the moment. And this is why I'm not going to oh, that's the wrong one. I want, where's the battle map? CK tokens. Oh, here we are. Sorry. So here we go. And let me zoom in. So let me just double check that you're looking at the same thing. All right. So in the last session, you can see they're really quite a large party. Plus, they are banded together with several bandits and brigands. So they have two NPCs here. There is Bart. He is the leader of the bandits. I don't want to click on the things to show the players how much hit points they have in case they do survive this next combat. And then there's Demon Harv, who is an evil cleric. They know that the bandits are obviously evil, and not all of the player characters are necessarily good, but none of them are evil. And so they're right now cooperating with a group of brigands, really, quite frankly, using them to try to get to this question of why various humanoid clans are, particularly goblins and hobgoblins, are moving down to the south into the bandit areas. And the bandits think that the party was a group of reinforcements sent to them. And so the party played into that misperception because they have a goal someplace up towards what is the Dark Chateau, which was the precursor to Castle Zajig. At least that's what was believed to be, that the Archmage of the Dark Chateau eventually established or brought about Castle Zajig. And so they're trying to gain access to the Dark Chateau, because there's rumored to be secrets there that may lead them to Castle Zadig, and then they'll go back to Yggsburgh with whatever they discover in order to get their just rewards and everything, and then we'll see where the thing goes. But you can see this map now, and when this posts tonight, they'll have already experienced what's going on here. But I just wanted to show you kind of what is, what they're facing up against. Now, there are several scenarios that can happen here, and I can contemplate at least four. One of them leads to complete disaster. All right, and that is that once they enter into this area here, this entire large section will be revealed to them, right? They will be able to see this entire larger section, not the other two separate components. They will see these hobgoblins up top here, and I can ping it. They'll see them flowing through the gate. They'll see these goblins running out of this gate over here. But they're literally going to walk in and see all of this chaos going on. So there are like 3.5 factions taking place here. There are the goblins who are scrambling away from their hobgoblin overseers. All right, the hobgoblin overseers are kind of treating them like slaves, and for whatever reason they are trying to drum them up to go up against the orcs. Now the orcs are this faction down here, and they had broken into they broke in through the palisades over here. There's a breach down over here. They used the two ogres that are with the orcs, and they are actually raiding at the same time. They are raiding the hobgoblin camp. Now, there's a bit of a backstory between the orcs, this particular orc clan and this particular hobgoblin clan that that the players will discover, and it's not completely fleshed out yet. What that connection is going to be. I'm going to wait to see how this scenario turns out before I continue fleshing that out, because it really depends on what the players choose to do in this scenario. So then there's a third separate group here, and that is this giant knoll. And like I said, I don't want to. Well, I'm sure that they'll either be killed or kill all of this basic stuff over here. But so there's a gnoll and his 4 bodyguards, and the gnoll is a representative of this gnollish sorcerer that the player characters have already been hinted about, and that goes into the Dark Chateau connection as well. And so overall, this gnoll sorcerer is the master of all of this chaos going on here. The gnoll is actually in charge of the hobgoblins, even though the hobgoblin has there is a hobgoblin chieftain that's here, plus several lieutenants. But the gnolls are really driving this whole backstory of trying to gain access to the Dark Chateau, which is actually the same intent of the player characters as well. So when the player characters enter into this area, like I said, they're going to have several options to do. I am hoping that they step in, they see the chaos, and then they pause. They hesitate. All right, and just look. Now I know I have some players who would be like, "Hey, I'm just going to sit back and let this play out until I see who's going to be left standing, and then we'll deal with them." And I think that if they convey that to each other quick enough, they will start to realize certain things about the dynamic of this whirling chaos that they're observing. They also have the brigands in their group, and the brigands are going to act in the way that they might. So hopefully the players will contemplate. Hey, wait a second. We want to get these mercenaries on the same page as we are. So if we're holding off, we want the brigands to hold off as well. Let's sit back and watch this happen. And that could be a separate component if that doesn't happen and they start arguing with each other, because that could end up being a fourth source of chaos going on in this case as well. So if the players coordinate amongst themselves and convince the brigands to hold off and let's watch this pan out, they will suddenly realize that the orcs are clearly on a raid and they are engaging with hobgoblins, and the orcs are also attacking the gnolls. They're going to see this gnoll ring, which is going to be closest to them to begin with, as being the center of at least one of the factions' leadership. And since they're going to see just the one very large gnoll and then 4 bodyguards, basically, I'm hoping that they identify that gnoll as a leader. And so they might just say, hey, let's take out the gnolls first, and let everything else. So if they do that, all right, that's probably the safest way to proceed, is to eliminate that faction. The next most powerful faction is obviously the hobgoblins, and the hobgoblins are not going to be very conducive to any kind of negotiation or peace deal or anything, because they really feel that they're the ones in charge of this, of this here. The goblins are totally fleeing from just about every direction. So the goblins will not engage the party unless the party actually attacks the goblins themselves. And even then, they're probably still in panic mode, probably still trying to flee anyway. But it will delay any other interaction the players might actually choose to go into. If the players attack the orcs are going to send at least one of its 2 ogres and a contingent of 4 orcs over at them. Now, they might get engaged by these other groups of hobgoblins coming out of this shack here. There is still a goblin archer up over here who will be shooting at them as they're entering in. And the other scenario is the total chaos scenario. If the player characters and the brigands march into here and they simultaneously or nearly simultaneously attack all 3 factions, then there will be a chance that each of the factions, in the first round, there'll be literally no chance. They're just going to be receiving these attacks. They're not going to identify it just yet. In the second round, there'll be a 2 in 6 chance that each of the 3 or 3.5 factions realize that there's an adventure party here, a group of humans and an elf and a gnome, and at that point, each of the factions may start turning against the party. If all 3 factions turn against the party, this is going to be a really, really rough and tumble fight for them. And they might, quite honestly, have to consider retreating. So that's the worst case scenario for them, unless they really do lay out some of their spells in really, really effectively. If they get really lucky with some of their attacks and they start eliminating the biggest of the threats. But again, I'm hoping I am hoping that they do that hesitation. I'm hoping that they, once they do that hesitation and they start to decipher the situation in front of them, that they determine which is the best group to possibly engage in, and then we'll go forward from there. I mean, if this thing turns into a total, you know, a total shit show for them, and they have to retreat, then they're closest to the gate, probably easiest to get back out again. Um, Only some might actually pursue them, not very many. But then the encampment, and I'll determine how this whole thing works out. But now the encampment, whether it's the hobgoblins or the orc graders, or the gnolls, if they do survive this, might send a messenger and alert all three different humanoid factions that there is a somewhat powerful player character, adventure party working with the bandits, the brigands, and so their response will start to develop and be more focused on the player characters, as opposed to fighting each other until they can be eliminated, because they will be seen as a greater threat to all of the various humanoid factions that are working in this general area. So it's it's going to be a really interesting night. I'm waiting to see how my six players really kind of handle this thing, and I especially want to see um, that they look to rein in the bandits, because that's the one contingent that they're not they're allied with. They might have some influence over, at least initially, provided that they think of doing it. So really excited about tonight's game. It's going to be, one thing when sometimes gaming gets criticized, especially Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, when people say, oh, it's just about, it's all combat, 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 and even though that this is potentially going to be a lot of combat, um, there's a lot of nuance in this. At least I'm hoping that there will be. Um, that the players will think of a different way than just attacking and trying to kill everything, because that's the only way that I think it does turn into disaster. And then it's not so much the treasure that they're going to pick up from this, potential wiping out of this encampment if they are ultimately successful, but it's about the information and the various strands of directions that they might go in afterwards, and and how they receive that information, and then what they decide to do with it is going to be something that I'll be thinking about for the following week, to see, well, where exactly are we going now. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great 18 weeks. We've had a few player changes here and there, and started at 10, and now it's down to 6. And 6 is a good sized number. So that should become a little bit easier. And again, this is my core group of players that I've been playing with now. Bill is of Shadow and Sun, and he's been with me for close to 2 years now. If I include when he came in about midway of my AD&D First Edition campaign, and then the rest of the party has been with me since 2021, when I started the AD&D First Edition campaign. So they've been with me for some of them close to 3 years now. So we've been, and that's been playing almost weekly for all of that time. So we kind of have a sense of how we each come to the come to the game table. They have a sense of me as a game master. I have a good sense of them as players and kind of what they're what they do with their characters. And even though they're playing these different characters, um, and they do really well as far as it's not exactly the same as the way they played their previous characters in the other campaign, other game system. Um, so it's, but I know that I have at least one player that'll be like, hey, why don't we just sit back and watch this thing? So I know that's a player trait that's, that has followed through with his, from one character to the other. But everything else has been, dramatically different for that character. And hopefully after this session or maybe the next couple of sessions, once they kind of solidify where they're looking to go, they'll have a more of a sense of what their individual player characters overall goal might be, and then as a party, what is their party really looking to do. And then I'm going to start considering a different subtitle for the campaign itself, because None Can Deny Us Independence is not exactly where I see the campaign standing right now. So so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the update of week 18 of my Castles and Crusades Yggsburgh campaign, and we'll see where my players take me next, because it's as much of a ride for me as it is for them. And I assure them of that I'm really enjoying it, and whatever direction that they really want to take this campaign into, I'm happy to try to accommodate and get that to work, and and hopefully gels together fairly soon, and we get a little bit more focus, but still leave things open enough for them to go on those little side quests or whatever strikes their interest in that moment. So yeah, it's been great, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't considered subscribing yet, please consider subscribing, and like and share the videos. Leave your comments in there. If you have any if you have any thoughts on running long campaigns and everything, and if you've experienced the same thing that I expressed during this video, or if you have some tips or whatever to maybe spark something in me that, I'll be like, oh, all right, that's a really good idea. I'll try that. I'd love to hear that as well. And you will have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a gaming table sometime soon. You'll have a great afternoon. Take care.